Thundertone Metal Reviews. I am a static picture this evening because I am reporting to you deep from behind enemy lines here at March Madness. And therefore, you cannot see my face, nor can you see my dreams, much like this Nevermore album that we will be doing. I am the Reverend Ben Lindsay, and with me, as always, are Tracy, the Chicken Slaughter Newport, Gabe, my basement is a club, Cooper, and Dr. David Pizzo. Gentlemen, how are you doing this evening?
A wonderful evening with a cheerful soundtrack to listen to tonight.
It's March. It's maddening. My team is getting crushed, but I'm here with you all, so life goes on.
Just like your dreams from this music.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Ben, did you pay the cover? Just asking, man.
I always pay the piper and the cover. So yeah, Tracy, what are we doing this week?
Our first one up in the chamber this week is Nevermore's Dreaming Neon Black. This was Benjamin's pick. It is their third studio album. It was recorded in Village Productions. It was released on Century Media. The producer in the chair is Neil Kernan. It comes in at a runtime of 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 5 seconds. The band we have is Worrell Dane on vocals, Jim Shepard on bass, Jeff Loomis on guitars, Tim Calvert on guitars, Van Williams on drums, and Christine Rhodes provides additional vocals. And it was released on January 26, 1999.
Why'd you pick this, Benjamin?
The reason I picked this is because there was another album that was picked for this docket that is kind of in the same genre. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, cool, we should do some Nevermore. And so that is why I picked this.
Can you also tell us the horrifying story you told us today in a random parking lot?
I can tell you random parking lot metal stories. So this random parking lot metal stories is about the impetus for this album, which is kind of revealed and makes the album cover even more sad, I guess,
Disturbing,
than it
maybe?
currently is. Just disturbing. Also sad and disturbing, much like the life of Five Finger Death Punch fans. And the story is that the lead singer and lyric writer had been in I don't know how long the relationship was, but he had been in a long-term relationship with a girl, and then she disappeared. And his working hypothesis was that she had gotten involved with a cult and they had kidnapped her and done something to her. So he wrote this album, which has a lot of lyrics and songs about a man who has lost his love and is going insane from the grief and not knowing what happened to her. When this album comes out, they still didn't know what had happened to his girlfriend. A few years after this, her body was found, and she was the victim of a truck driving serial killer in the greater Washington area.
Holy shit.
With her
Yeah.
husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robert Ben Rhodes got her. And he didn't know that. He just thought she vanished into a cult, so it was bad enough. But this is a moment where reality exceeded his worst nightmare. So
Well, that was like a 15-year time gap, though, between end of relationship to this, right?
It was a significant time gap. I don't know the exact amount, but I believe that they had been broken up for 10 years by the time that he wrote the album. So
yeah.
Probably.
Okay. So,
which I didn't know this back in the day. I mean, because I bought this album because it's just one of those albums that got a lot of press in the metal magazines talking about how great it was. And yes, we were having to rely on metal magazines at the time this came out. So I got it. And to be honest, when I first listened to it, I didn't quite get it. This was not thrash, and therefore I did not really care. So I wanted to revisit it.
Yeah, this is definitely not a thrash album. Was this Gabe's and David's first experience with Nevermore? This is either my third or fourth album that I've heard by them, and I've heard one of Whirl's. I heard Whirl's solo album that was released posthumously after he died.
Yeah.
I had the Politics of Ecstasy, so I had the album before this that I bought at the time in '96. I thought it was okay, but I didn't get into that enough to buy subsequent releases, so it was sort of a one-off for me. So this was only my second listening experience, and it's been like 25 years, so it's been a good bit. But I know what the band is. That's the album with the baby on the cover and the fire. So I had that one.
Yeah, the one where they hadn't quite made their decision whether they were going to be a grunge band
Yes.
or a metal band yet. Yeah.
Correct. It was a little confusing. So, and I listened to both grunge and metal, but it didn't quite nail down either one. So I knew it's rather different than this one. I was a little surprised. Something scrim as shit. I know it's supposed to represent escalating madness or descending madness, depending on your metaphor. In each song, it's supposed to be like a layer cake of horror psychologically, and I think it achieves that.
Yeah, hearing more about it from you all now, it kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. This is definitely my first experience with the band. And my impressions on listening to it was that it did have some songs that rocked pretty hard, but it sounded a lot like heavy metal, even though it came out in the late 90s. And there were some moments on it where it did sound of that time in sort of a new metal way, but not exactly. And it is kind of like a descent into madness or a descent into sort of delirium or what have you. And it's super gothy, like it's just very, very gothy. That said, the singing I found quite good on this record in the sense that it also reminded me of the dude from Candlemass, though not as sort of hard hitting. The only problem that I had with it, I think, the singing was that a lot of the times they use the same vocal harmonies, so that kind of got old over time. But I could kind of see why Ben picked this, or maybe had felt drawn to it at one point, because it does remind me of Dawn of Solace. But maybe that's just my my bias kicking in.
I can definitely say that it is similar to Dawn of Solace, and I have come around to liking that style. Although, like I said, at the time, it wasn't really my thing. I appreciated the singing on it because you don't hear too many natural baritone singers, or at least who are singing in a baritone in metal. So I appreciated that as somebody who, when I sing, has a deeper voice. So I could cleave to that a little bit, but yeah, I just wasn't at the time ready for something that, even though he didn't realize it, was reflecting such a real life tragedy in this kind of way. Like, I was fully into Slayer or Megadeth or stuff like that, or punk bands. So we're talking about politics that were rage filled, but I hadn't quite tapped into the sorrow of existence as I have now as a 40-year-old, as I had at the time as like 21 or something, 22. So yeah.
You were still hopeful in the world?
I know I was angry, but not beaten down. So, but yeah, no, I think that I'm glad that this band kind of made the switch more into metal and away from grunge. Although I think they probably could have been successful in grunge too if they'd gone. I did not check into Nevermore after this. I do think somewhere along the way we might need to do some of their later albums, because I hear quite good things about them. But this was an album that I liked quite a bit after it sat for 20-something years.
So the albums I've heard by these guys is actually the two albums that follow it, Dead Heart in a Dead World and Godless Emperor. Or the Godless Endeavor, the Godless Emperor, or the two I heard that I've listened to. I like those a lot, and I think I probably like a little bit more in this album because there's more polish on those albums, but they do, I think, also kind of, if you can think of a dig of it, darker as well. So they kind of do get a little more into the darker elements even on that one. Is with, I think, the backstory of the of his lost love being found murdered adds a sense of gravitas to this album that the other ones don't replicate. So they're written from a darker point to begin with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
this is
thinking she'd
gothic in
vanished
a
into a cult. Oh, no, you go ahead.
no, I was just going to say this is gothic in a way that at the time the goth metal, and I think I had my timeline right. If you were to say to somebody who's goth metal who was like coming at least from the genres that I listen to, it would be Typo Negative. And Typo Negative, while they are definitely gothic, they also are a lot more tongue in cheek. At least on the albums that were out at this time, they progressively get darker too. As Peter Still's drug habit takes effect, and he has deaths in his family. But this has none of that. I mean, this is pretty bleak lyrically the entire way through. I'm sorry, David, what were you going to say?
I was simply going to say that even before knowing about the murder, just her vanishing into a cult and him going insane because that loss was already atrocious enough. And that just, as you say, adds an entire another layer of horror and dysfunction to it. She was on her way to a religious event. They were like hitchhiking when it happened. So the religion was not unrelated, but it
Right.
was dumb luck, or dumb unluck, rather. Ugh. But as you said earlier today, Ben, in some ways this album's time has come. Right? Like in terms
Yeah.
of the bleakness
Yeah.
of this. I mean, 1999
Yeah.
felt like that for some people, but yeah, I get this more now than I probably would have then.
Shall we move on to songs?
I'm going to say agree with you. I just want to kind of chime in on my thoughts on his vocals because I do like his vocals a lot. And it's almost, it reminds me a bit of King Diamond as well. If we want to do callbacks to other similar vocal artists that we've done in the past,
I can see
because he does have the baritone style, but he also is able to hit some of the higher notes as well. And he does do that back and forth that King Diamond does quite a bit, and at least what we've listened to from him.
Sure. I can see that.
But then, songs, anyone?
I guess I can start. I think that Beyond Within is a really good. I'm going to take the Gabe line that the instrumental is not the actual opener, and that Beyond Within is. I like that quite a bit. The Death of Passion, Dreaming Neon Black. I think that's really good. Poison God Machine. I like that quite a bit. Actually, there's quite a bit in the last half of the album that I really liked. Forever stands out to me because I think that is a really lyrically impactful song, and then the choice to have 6 minutes of silence for it to just drag on and on was a very brave choice, and something that I don't necessarily want to sit through 6 minutes of silence for. And today I quite frankly just won't. I'll just skip into the next track, but listening to it in CD format or on an album, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Why is this still playing would be very interesting.
Well, that track, the last 10 seconds of it starts with a section of video, and so it loops back around to the beginning of it. So it, in a sense, tries to do it to where it's a continuous album almost, in a sense. Like, you talked about previously when people would listen to music and fall asleep, that silence at the end of it as a transition.
It's just very weird in the digital era, right? As we've talked about with other hidden tracks or whatever. You go ahead, Tracy.
Okay, well, I'm going to follow the Ben and Gabe bandwagon and say Beyond Within is not exactly, or not Beyond, Obsidian's not exactly an opener. It's just 47 seconds. But I enjoy really the run. I enjoy the run from Beyond Within through Dreaming Neon Black, I Am the Dog. On the back half, only really Cenotaph drew me towards it. I think it's a solid album overall, but I think the front half is stronger, in my opinion, than the back half.
I'm going to ride on Tracy's coattails here, and I think we should probably take a drink anytime anyone says the back half falls off, which I think it did on this record too. But I really dug actually Beyond Within and Death of Passion, I Am the Dog, and The Fault of the Flesh is really awesome. Not all the other stuff really grabbed me, and it was sometimes just a little slow for my taste. I do respect the artistic choice to end the record with basically 6 minutes of silence, but it's not for me. Certainly not.
I don't have a whole lot to add. This album, like Gabe, is pretty slow for me and a bit subdued and very sad. But it's pretty. It was convincing in terms of selling me what madness feels like in an escalating way. I could do without both Ophidian and Forever. I was not entirely sold on those, but as you say, he can absolutely sing, and songwriting these are well constructed songs. But I would tend to listen to it as I did this time as an album. I don't think I would I just gotta hear Poison God Machine, though that song is pretty good. But that's my 2 cents. It's a whole album kind of deal.
All right, gentlemen, grades. Where would you rank it in the pantheon of metal music?
Give this a B plus. I think it's an excellent album. It's something, like I said, that at the time I wasn't super high on, but going back and listening to it, I can see why it got the press that it did at the time. And it is definitely not an A album by any stretch, but I would give it a B plus.
I'm gonna agree with Ben there. I think it's an excellent album. B plus. And it also gives me room to grade their other albums, which I know 2 of them I would rank higher. So just kind of gives me a little breathing room to establish the curve.
I think I'm going to come in a little bit lower than you all at a B minus. This is a solid album, and it's really still in the B range because the tracks that I like on it are really, really, really good. But I would have trouble listening to it the whole way through more times than was necessary.
I'm going to come in right where Gabe is. I think it's let me give it an 82, the highest B minus. It's interesting. But again, I don't think I would seek out a ton more of this, but I think it's definitely worth an 82.
That gives us a Thunderdome aggregate grade of a P, a good album. So
Yeah,
I feel like it may not belong in everybody's must-have collection, but I think everybody does better by at least hearing it once. Is probably a good word to put it.
Yeah, if I were going to do a big list of metal albums you should listen to, this would be on there, but it would be pretty freaking far down. You would have to expand the list beyond probably 100 albums before I would get to it. But I did own this. I would buy it again.
Sure.
So
I think I would, because from what I've heard from for solo work and their other albums, that they would start to become almost collectionists for me, that just to kind of complete the set.
I'm good. I think. I mean, I'm glad I'm glad I know about it, but nah, I don't need to buy it. I'm not hating on those that do. It's not quite my thing.
Yeah, I think the situation in which I would buy it is if I listened to some of their other records and I happen to enjoy it,
Sure.
and I could come back to it and say, hey, I understand kind of what they're doing here in a way that I didn't before or something. But maybe not now.
All righty, gentlemen. Next up on the list for Thunderdome is going to be David's pick and Sepultura's Arise.
You're welcome. That cover, y'all.
Nice.
indeed.
I'm pumped. Like that was the first one of those I bought. First Sepultura album I got. So.
It's an interesting one to pick, to say the least. But tune in next time to find out why David put this on us.